This is On Track, talkSPORT's motorsport show every week on talkSPORT 2, also on the talkSPORT podcast network. And you can watch the show on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube channel. I'm Jon Jackson, joined this week once again by Racing News 365's Nick Golding. And loads coming up. We're going to look ahead to the Jeddah E-Prix this weekend, our first doubleheader of Formula E this season. We're also going to look forward to Formula E's Evo Sessions, which returns with a slightly different format this year. So, Nick, we're about to fly off to Jeddah for the Formula E this weekend. It's our second time in Jeddah after last year. People who've listened to or watched this show for over a year will remember our post-race debrief, which featured many feline friends from the local area. Can't wait to see what happens with our broadcast this weekend. It's live on talkSPORT 2, 5 and 5 on Saturday and also Friday night. It's a slightly different setup this weekend. What are you expecting? What are we going to have that's out of the ordinary in Jeddah this week?
Well, we can't even say that out of the ordinary is bats and cats and delivery men on mopeds while sitting in a car park, because it was probably the weirdest recording location I've ever done in my life. I don't know about you. I know you've recorded some strange places, but it's going to be a wild weekend. Of course, being in Jeddah at the Jeddah Corniche circuit, it takes place under the lights in the evening over in Saudi Arabia. It's always a good one to watch because the cars just look so good under the lights. You've already mentioned it's a double header. It's also, of course, the first pit boost race of the year, which means it'll be the first time seeing the new rules for the pit boost races as well. Last year, both races were really exciting. I think we're in store for a good weekend.
Do you want to elaborate straight away on pit boost then? Because it's the technology that we saw come in for the first race of double headers last season. And it's a fast charging 30-second pit stop, which gives you, still 10% of the car's capacity in 30 seconds, which is amazing technology. And it's been changed this year with attack mode as well, hasn't it?
It has. So effectively, last year when there was pit boost races, which only take place on doubleheader weekends. So last year on a doubleheader weekend, one race had the pit boost, the other was just the traditional two attack modes style of racing. Interestingly, last year, the pit boost races also featured two usages of attack mode needed. This season, only one 6-minute attack mode will be taken during a pit boost race. So actually, that's a massive change in strategy. So it'll be really interesting to see who gets it right, who gets it wrong. Maybe we'll see some teams take that 1 6-minute attack mode right at the beginning, or we could see others try and leave it as late as possible to get a late pace advantage. But of course, if we see a late safety car, that plan, goes upside down out the window. So yeah, going to be something to watch because undoubtedly a few teams are probably going to get it wrong.
Yeah, and I think we saw in Miami actually last time out in the third round of the season, obviously 4 and 5 coming up this weekend. Some of the drivers took attack mode really soon because they wanted to get that advantage and get a lead and hopefully pull out into the distance because they were, I guess, expecting a standard race and maybe a lower chance of a safety car. And in the end, we didn't get a safety car, and that's kind of what happened. It kind of benefited those drivers that did that. When it comes to this track, obviously, people will know the track from Formula One, but it's a slightly different version as we often see in Formula E.
It is. So it's not the full circuit used by Formula One at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. We use the same 2, 3 for the first corners before then a tight hairpin. Effectively, it's kind of like the circuit they use for touring cars and things like that. So not the same as Formula One. Lots of chicanes, maybe one chicane too many. That was one feedback from several drivers last season. But it's a good venue again. It's under the lights and it's always probably one of the standouts on the calendar because they always have after the races massive concerts. There's a big artist, Future is there, I believe on Friday night if I'm not mistaken, obviously a massive name in the music world, and it's always as well a very well attended race. And of course, I've mentioned this already a few times, it's a night race and personally love them. I'm a big fan of them. I just think everything just looks better, the liveries just really pop, and of course in Formula we've got some quite shiny ones, thinking of course of the black and gold of DS Penske. So all in all, I think it's worth watching the Jeddah E-Prix this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be live on talkSPORT 2 from 5 on Friday night and Saturday night. And also you can watch it live in the United Kingdom on TNT Sports or ITVX. And of course, if you're listening to or watching this around the world, there are different places you can watch it around the world. So just check Formula E's website to see where you can catch the action. You mentioned DS Penske, takes me on nicely to my next question, because so far this season, Maximilian Günther and Taylor Barnard have kind of struggled for points. Taylor Barnard got 12 points in the second race of the season in Mexico City. Max got 8 in Brazil to start the season. Other than that, no points for the DS Penske drivers. It's a brand new team lineup put together this season. And last season in Jeddah, Max obviously won the first race and Taylor was on the podium for both races. So is this the weekend that we start to see DS Penske making waves and getting some good points in the season, because obviously been disappointing so far? Or are they going to continue to struggle a little bit? Because, of course, there are changes, as we talked about, with the pit boost, which means that the strategy they used last season, and also it's probably going to be a bit warmer this year, won't work as well.
I think it's actually going to be, not just for DS Penske, but for several teams, a really crucial weekend of massive amounts of learning. I'll go back to speaking to Oliver Rowland in Miami, because obviously somebody else who was insane in Jeddah last year was him, the reigning world champ. He claimed second in the first race, won the second, was just phenomenal across both races in Jeddah. I kind of put to him Miami, he was so good in Jeddah last year. Surely the same thing's going to happen this time out. And for him, actually, this is something he's really intrigued to see what happens, because he believes all the teams have improved. So maybe isn't expecting to be as strong in Saudi Arabia. That could be a similar case then for DS Penske, because if DS Penske are strong, then that kind of, ruins Ollie's feeling that teams are improving. And you mentioned there for Taylor, it's a double header. So of course there's 2 opportunities here to get used to the track. He already knows it well, but obviously not so much in the Stellantis package. And we tend to see that when drivers move to a new team, it's the second race of a doubleheader, they get big points. We saw that last year in Berlin with Felipe Drugovich, of course, who made his debut with Mahindra stepping in for Nick De Vries, had a pretty terrible first race. Come the next day, went and scored big points in just a second race in Formula E. So you can expect to see some big surprises, I think, in the second race. Can Taylor get a first podium, maybe even his first win with DS Penske? Don't rule it out. Possible.
Yeah, Taylor Barnard has had fastest laps, pole positions. He's been on second. He's been third on the podium last season in his rookie year. But the one thing he didn't get was a win. And given he knows this track well, I think he raced there in F3 and possibly F2, and maybe just F2 actually, wasn't it? He knows the track incredibly well. He just needs to get a result in that car. And I think it would really spur on the DS Penske team for one of those drivers to at least get one podium this weekend. We talk about last year, Ollie Rowland won the second race last year in Jeddah. He didn't manage to get on the podium last time out, but started the season pretty strong in his title defense. 4th in the championship at the moment, 2nd in the first race, 3rd in the second race. Didn't get points, just outside the top 10 in 12th in the last race in Miami. For Ollie Rowland, if he wants to defend his championship, I'm thinking he's probably going to need ideally a win this weekend, or maybe a couple of podiums to stay in the mix, because so far we've seen the people we would expect to be very strong this season, the likes of Nick Cassidy, the championship leader, Pascal Wehrlein and Jake Dennis as well. We've seen them really come out of the blocks.
I mean, there's 6 points separating the top 4 in the championship. It is already so close, but we're already seeing behind that top 4, there's then a bit of a breakaway taking place. And I pointed this out, I think, on this show a couple of weeks ago, that the likes of Mexico, Miami have just had, of course, and, Friday and Saturday coming up in Jeddah are really crucial races, because we then have a 5-6 week break until Madrid. And obviously then it's about the third of the season done, with 58 points up for grabs in Saudi Arabia. That's a massive amount. If a driver has a bad weekend and is a title contender, they could find themselves slipping maybe 20, 30 points adrift on the top of the championship. That's not easy to make up in Formula E. You can do it, of course, quite easily, but it's often the case that once you fall adrift, it's then quite difficult to make that back up. Nick Cassidy, look back at last year, had a terrible start to the season, was then insane for the second half of the year, claiming so many wins, but ultimately, the damage was done. He couldn't quite make up the deficit he had to Oliver Rowland. So, Ollie had a bad weekend in Miami. So did Nick Cassidy, of course, who remains the championship leader. 1 or 2 races, bad races, you can afford in a title campaign in Formula E. More than that, and you're kind of in the danger zone of losing that title chance. It's very early days. That's what everyone has been saying. But when there's 58 points up for grabs, 2 race wins in Saudi Arabia, it's a really crucial weekend.
Well, one driver I think we should look out for this weekend is Porsche's Nico Müller. A great weekend for him in Miami last time out. He was on pole position. That's his first pole position in Formula E. And he equaled his best result, finishing the race second. Means he's down, in fifth in the championship. Pascal, his teammate, second in the championship. A lot more harmony in the Porsche team this year. And it actually means that they lead the teams and the manufacturers championship by over 25 points in each championship. They're looking strong this year. And for Nico, I mean, he's got a real kind of boost there. He's maybe had a couple of seasons where he struggled a little bit, maybe not had the car he wanted underneath him, maybe didn't kind of get on with the Andretti car as much as he would have liked. For him, that's a huge boost, as I say, coming into this weekend. And we know that the Porsches are going to be strong.
I think Nico has been one of the unsung heroes of these early rounds in the championship. Nobody really quite knew what he would be able to do. Would he just play second fiddle, be the number 2 to Pascal Wehrlein? That doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. Of course, as you pointed out, it was Nico who claimed pole in Miami, went and finished second in the race behind Mitch Evans. And actually, is doing really well in the championship. And yes, okay, he was with a customer Porsche team last year in Andretti, but obviously didn't get the full factory experience that he's now getting, and quite clearly it's working for him. The team are loving having him around. He's been crucial already in their Gen 4 development, obviously coming into place next season. I'm intrigued because if Nico can build now a couple of good results together, starting in Saudi Arabia, building on from Miami, who's to say he can't be a title contender? And if that does happen, it'll be really fascinating how Porsche plays it, because I always liken Porsche to Red Bull and Pascal Wehrlein to Max Verstappen, because Pascal is very much always been the number 1 for Porsche. Last year, Antonio Felix da Costa, was kind of treated like the number 2. That's kind of what was expected from Nico Müller this year. But so far, they're being treated as equals. If Nico keeps getting good results and, is close to Pascal in the championship, is that going to make team orders, if they need team orders later in the year, difficult to put into place? I'm intrigued. I think it's a really interesting one. But for me, a driver who actually really should be looked out for is, I'm going to say every single race, I think, is Pepe Marti. Because actually, let's point out, it's a double header. This is a big weekend for the rookies. You look at Joel Eriksson, Felipe Drugovich, Pepe Marti, who, having 2 cracks at it with a double header, they effectively get a second go at it. They get the first race, the first qualifying, to just learn the track, see the start of racing. Of course, it'll be their first experience of pit boost as well. So that's going to be an interesting learning curve. And Pepe has been getting rapidly stronger. Didn't get huge points in Miami, but looked really good in his first experience of racing in the wet in Formula E. He does know Saudi Arabia, of course, from Formula 2 as recently as last year. So you know what? If we're going to do a little bit of predictions, I'm going to try and introduce this with you, because I know we like having a little bit of a prediction. I've got a feeling Pepe is on for at least the top 5 in one of the races this weekend. I really do think there is a big result coming for him really soon.
Okay, we will watch this space. Maybe he'll do what Taylor Barnard did last year with his knowledge of that track and get 2 podiums. You never know. Before we move on, there are 3 drivers with no points. I'm not going to call them the pointless drivers. Can we see points for any of the 3 drivers with no points? That's Felipe Drugovich, Lucas Di Grassi, and Dan Ticktum.
Felipe, yes, because again, double header. So as I just kind of mentioned with Pepe, good chance that, this could be a good weekend for him, like Berlin was obviously his previous experience of a double header last year. Dan, to his credit, should have had points in probably every single race this season if it wasn't for just one thing after another going against him. And I think if the same happens this week, if Dan leaves Saudi Arabia with 0 points, he may well be touted as the unluckiest driver in Formula E. I think he's already getting that title based on this season so far, because he does not deserve to be on 0. He should be comfortably in the top 5 or 6 of the championship. Probably would be had the things not gone against him already this year. Thinking of the, being hit by Nick De Vries in Sao Paulo, of course, then having, issues in Mexico City where he got taken out again. And then obviously in Miami, the car was just not set up right. Dan deserves more. I think he'll be quick this weekend and finally get his season properly up and running.
He's got a point to prove, hasn't finished a race so far this season. So yeah, Dan's going to want to be looking good after this race weekend. You never know, he'll probably go and win both races now and he'll be right near the top in the title picture. We watch this space, and of course you can listen to that race, both races, on the talkSPORT 2 through the talkSPORT app, or you can choose to listen on DAB, or you can check it out on the talkSPORT Driving YouTube channel. We'll have the live audio stream on there as well. So that's 5 p.m. on Friday, 5 p.m. on Saturday. Races 1 and 2 in Jeddah in the Formula E World Championship, rounds 4 and 5 of the championship.